Peace, power, and love. What's going on, everybody out there? It's your one and only Chef Smooth. Yep, I'm on. Constant Chef Smooth. My bad, y'all, man. I'm having fun today. We're going to talk about a topic that is, pretty important and popular, and that is Africa, the continent of Africa. And we're going to be talking about South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. And this is kind of going to be an ongoing series. It's going to be talking about some of the antiquity of Africa, particularly Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan, because a lot of times romanticism is focused on one spot, and that's the famous, world-famous Kemet, aka Egypt, Nile Valley. Everybody talks about that area. But we tend to forget that Africa is 13 million square miles, 56 nation states, including including Madagascar, which is an island just south of Africa, but it's still part of that continent. So we're going to talk about Africa in depth, and we're going to have the esteemed brother Haru from Team O.S.I.R.I.S give a presentation and a dissertation on it. Before we start, I would like to open up in traditional fashion that we're all accustomed to. And shout out to, shameless plug to my associate and friend who actually hand dipped this cigar for me and hand rolled it. Oh, yes. So for all of those who know and do not know, this is for those who honor Papa Legua as he opens the door to wisdom, truth, freedom, and justice, peace, and love as he moves forward in the footsteps of our ancestors. So with that being said, I would like to quickly and respectfully turn the floor over to Brother Haru. And you're much appreciated. And I yield the floor.
Yo, everybody hear me out there?
Yes, sir.
Nah, can I be heard? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I hear you.
I hear you.
Hey, you good to go?
Yeah, it was because it's kind of choppy on my end, so I didn't know if y'all can hear me or not. What's going on, family? Peace, power, and love. Peace to the entire panel. Today, we got a short presentation. It won't be too long. We're just gonna be dealing with we're gonna start dealing with West Africa a little more. Today we're gonna just touch the surface of three particular ethnic groups. It's gonna be the Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Mandinka. Today we're gonna cover a little bit of their culture. We're also gonna get into the science of those particular groups also. So we're gonna get some then we're gonna go along with some science. As far as our culture is concerned, their particular beliefs, what locations they are in, a little bit of the language, what these groups do in their day-to-day lives, and we're also gonna get into a little bit of the relationship between them and African Americans. I think the first group I'm going to try to start with is the Yoruba. If you guys give me 1 second, I'm trying to get something queued up here so I can show the family. So give me a hot second here really quick.
Okay, brother, while you're while you're doing that, it's important to understand Africa for the simple fact that we are descendants of that area that is called Africa. But we also understand that the term Africa is a classification that was bestowed upon us by European and Eurasian settlers under the auspicity of Hellenization and before that, Romanticism. So we are fully aware of the classification and naming of the continent Africa. That we use the term Africa for a sense of relativity as we are speaking English in this venue. And so we're speaking from that perspective, but in no means are we not honoring each individual ethnic group, i.e. tribe, that is in Africa, as they are generally called Africans, but specifically have blood ties. And that is exactly what, in all due respects, that the brother Haru was going into, to give respect to the ethnic names of all the different groups of people that live in Africa, the continental indigenous African. Brother Haru dropped out for a minute. I know he's got some technical problems. So what I'll do is open the floor to introduction from the left to my right, starting with Queen Neferka of Team Offset. Peace and love, Queen. How you doing today?
Peace, everybody. Thank you for having me.
That's good. And Brother Melvin, the Grand Archivist of Team O.S.I.R.I.S. What's going on, King?
What's going on, man? Peace to everybody on the panel, everybody listening.
One love. And last but definitely not least, you know, I haven't found a good moniker or name for this brother yet. He's a unique brother, man. Very, very intelligent and outspoken brother. Brother Chris, man, what's going on, King? Okay, maybe Brother Chris is indisposed and not able to speak at the moment, because I wanted to put Chris on the spot because he's our resident linguist. And I wanted to ask his opinion on this upcoming debate with, well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. I think that needs special attention.
All right, there we go.
But are you ready, Ken?
Yeah. I was just having some technical difficulties. It would mess up now. Ain't that crazy?
That's the man.
All right.
That's the white man. Go ahead, Ken.
All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna do a little bit of the Yoruba real quick. As y'all know, the Yoruba people are primarily situated in Nigeria. The group does spill over a little bit into Togo, Benin. That's West Africa. I want to say this is one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa, period. Not just West Africa, but Africa, period. You're looking at around of the 40 million individuals. They speak their own language, and then they also speak a minor in French and English also. They have a traditional religion, also coupled with Christianity and Islam. By them being in West Africa, they're in a I don't want to say a golden spot, but they're in a particular spot to where hold on one second. They're mixed in with Christianity and Islam, but if I'm not mistaken, a nice number of them are Christians. Also, let me go here. Yeah, I got my stuff up. They speak a Niger Congo language. Also, I think if I'm not mistaken, all three groups that we're going to cover today, they all three of them speak a Niger Congo language. They're in the same language family, just different variations. A nice portion of the Yoruba people are African Americans. A lot of us have Yoruba ancestry, along with the Igbo and the Mandinka. That's one of the reasons I wanted to pick these three groups, because I wanted to draw some familiarity with the family over here in America as to some of the origins or over in Africa. They also have nice populations down in the Caribbean, and also some down in Brazil also. All right, then I'm gonna move to the next group. I'm gonna do the Igbo. Igbo, they're on the other side of Nigeria from the Yoruba. They are also one of the largest ethnic groups in Africa. If I'm not mistaken, it's around about 30 million of them. We do share a lot of ancestry with them also. They have their own spiritual traditions. They also have, I would say they're more Christian than Islamic, that particular group. And then the last group is the Mandinka, one of the larger ethnic groups. I forget the numbers on them, but I want to say it's about, I was checking, it was about 12 million in them. I'll double check those numbers here pretty shortly. They're more Islamic, if I'm not mistaken. 99% of them Islamic, mixed with a little bit of indigenous background traditions. Any questions so far on that?
Is that, and that's the Mandinka, correct?
Hold on. I don't know why, but I'm not
what
getting
tribe are
good
you speaking
feedback
of?
from you. So it's kind of choppy over here, Consul. I can barely hear you.
What tribes are you? What tribe are you speaking of right now?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Real choppy.
Hey, Ru, can you hear me?
Nah, you kind of choppy too, Mel.
Yeah, you might want to just drop and let's switch to your phone if you can.
Yeah, give me one.
Yeah, brother Haru, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it's him.
Okay. Brother Haru, can you hear?
Yeah, you sound pretty clear, Melvin.
Yeah, just some technical difficulties.
Okay. What I believe he was talking about the Mandinka tribe, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he's giving an overview of them.
Okay. The question I really want to ask, and I want him to put out there, is the relevancy or the effects of West Africa upon the Americas, as opposed to the Nile Valley upon the Americas, as he goes into these different tribes. I've heard that question put out there so many times. So it would be very interesting to see his perspective on that, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions and misnomers about that particular opinion, because a lot of people have a strong affinity for the Nile Valley. So I would love to get his perspective on that. Anyone else on the panel would like to field that question I asked?
Well, I would like to if I can.
Mm-hmm.
But you mean answer the question you just posed, right? I didn't hear the very
Yes.
last part.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's still that part of our heritage and our ancestry still have an influence on our culture today. Especially in the southern region of the United States. Many of our grandparents and great grandparents come from that region. And I talk a lot on Facebook. I haven't done a presentation on it or anything like that, but I've spoken a lot on Facebook about the Gullah Geechee. And obviously Geechee Gullah Jack has spoken a lot about that culture. and down to some of the slang that we use, or some of the language that we use in the South, the foods that we eat. I also brought up the fact that my great grandmother used to weave a kind of blanket out of cloth or pieces of rag. Whenever someone moved into their first apartment or their first house in my family, it was a tradition that she did before she passed away. And that's all Gullah Geechee culture, and that stems from West African culture. So it still has an effect, more so, it has an effect on us more so than Nile Valley culture. But that, Nile Valley culture is mainly what everybody wants to relate to, but we have more ties to um, the peoples that Haru are speaking of, the Mandinka and the Yoruba and the Igbo. So I think he's back. So
Oh, much appreciated. Much appreciated. Brother Haru, can you hear us?
Yeah. I got we back there a little better.
Okay. Well, a question I wanted to ask was, it's a two-part question. Which tribe were you just speaking of?
You said which tribe was I just speaking of? I was speaking of all three of them. I was just giving a general overview of all three of them real quick. The Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Mandinka. That's the ones I was speaking of. And then I was gonna move into the next portion, was gonna be dealing with the culture.
Okay, because my question was, with you speaking on Western Africa, the influence that Western and Sub-Saharan Africa has on the Americas, as opposed to the influence of the Nile Valley region of Africa.
Right. West Africa has a lot more influence than the Nile Valley region. As we know, something called the transatlantic slave trade is what drew millions of people from that region over here to the Americas, from South America all the way up here to North America, and even in some instances over to portions of Europe. So these West African groups, these are not all of them in totality. These are just a couple, but these groups are primarily where African Americans are coming from.
Okay, understood. Because a lot of people have that misnomer that we're just direct from Nile Valley. But continue, brother. I digress.
Okay. The species as a whole, the human species, it arose in East Africa, around about 195,000, 200,000 years ago. Our particular groups are no different. I would say that our particular groups of people started arriving in West Africa probably around 12,000 years ago. They came over from East Africa. They traveled, from what our research shows, they traveled up north a little bit into the Nile Valley, not all the way up to like Egypt or far up, anything like that. They traveled up a little bit, then they started to move over west. And as they moved over west, some settled here, and even then they had something called a Bantu expansion, where a lot of the ones that settled, some of them started moving more south, and they started moving back east. So I mean, even on the continent, there was a lot of migrations. Nobody really stayed still. You know what I mean?
Definitely. We know our people were moving people. They were never stagnant.
Yeah. So, and then of course, with that with the migrations and the moving around the continent, you get different technologies, and you start to see different cultures start to mix and interact. And that's where we're gonna come right now. We're gonna stick with West Africa. I feel like it's better for us to start getting knowledge about the regions and the people that we directly descend from. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kemet is good, I love the Nile Valley, and it's no disrespect to them at all. I just feel like at some point we need to start focusing on the people that we came from, and seeing how they interact in their culture, what they do in their day-to-day lives, you know, and what's their relationships to us personally. You know, it just seems like within the conscious community, for a long period of time, there has been a lot of focus on Nile Valley culture and not enough on West African or Central African culture. Does that answer your question, Brother Kansu?
Yes, it does. Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now I'm gonna get into the queuing up some. All right. As I stated before, you know, the Yoruba, that particular ethnic group is about 40 million individuals. Let's see, they speak a Niger Congo language. As I said, the name of the language is Yoruba. They say it's classified with Idikiri languages. So those are under the Volta Niger branch of the Niger Congo language. Forgive me for butchering some of these words, as I don't speak the language, so I'm going through it a little bit. All right. For them, the history of the Yoruba starts in I want to say around the 600s BCE, if I'm not mistaken. All right. They started the rise to power. One sec. I'm trying to get my notes here. All right, there we go. All right, yeah. They started the rise of power around that time. They are one of the earliest groups to come up out of that West African region. At this time, they weren't known as the Yoruba yet, but they were just starting to get the foothold in. All right. What I'm reading here says they are one of the most urbanized people in Africa. So they are definitely one of the more up-to-date groups for that particular region. Like I said earlier, they are in Benin, Togo, and Nigeria. So I would say Lagos, Nigeria is more of a Yoruba-controlled territory. That is the actual largest city in Nigeria, actually one of the largest in Africa. That is the urban center of that particular region. So these people have progressed a lot in the last two and a half thousand years. Of course, West Africa is still underdeveloped, but this is one of the particular groups that are in the right direction. All right. Then I'm gonna move on to the Igbo and give just a little general history of where they come from. Also, any questions about the Yoruba so far?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I had a question. I just wanted to know, and maybe you might get to that, but you were saying that you were speaking about, you know, the spiritual beliefs that the people hold today, as far as like Islam and Christianity. But I wanted to know if there's maybe a way that you could touch upon some of the indigenous spirituality that the indigenous people practiced before those influences.
Oh yes, sis. I'm gonna get there. All together, just here pretty shortly. All right. As far as the Igbo people go, I say Igbo because that's how you correctly pronounce it. A lot of people don't know that there's a G there, but according to their language, you're supposed to pronounce it Igbo. All right. Like I said, they're on the other side of Nigeria from the Yoruba. There's another major ethnic group that they border to, like, I want to say like the Northwest, and that'll be the Hausa, which I'm going to do something on the Hausa soon too, in part 2. But this time I'm just going to focus on these two. The Igbo live in a place called Igbo land, is what they call it, in southeast Nigeria. Like I said, they are one of the largest ethnic groups in Nigeria, or should I say in the entire continent. Where they live is mostly rural areas. They have a couple of major cities. For them, their big thing is farming. They do a lot of farming in yams. You know, yams is a primarily West African, so it's a big part of their diet, and other cultures surrounding them. It's a big part of their diets also. Let's see. I want to move on to the Mandinka too. Any questions about the Igbo so far? And remember, there's going to be more to it, so I'm going to add more as we go. This is just the first part.
Right. I did have a question, if you don't mind. What would be the difference? What would be something that would automatically stick out as a difference between the Yoruba and the Igbo? I mean, I know you're describing it now, but you're gonna see certain similarities, such as the lands that they occupy, as well as some of the spiritualities and cultural aspects. Could you give us like an obvious difference between the two?
Yes, I would say one of the biggest differences besides Christianity and Islam would be probably the spiritual belief systems. It's not necessarily that they're so much different, but of course, they have different names, and the concepts just may be a little bit different. Also, the traditional dress, you can definitely tell the difference between the groups and the traditional dress. I would say I'm trying to describe the dress. I would say it's more vibrant colors with the cloths that they dress in. Usually dress in they usually have red hats. It's similar to a fez, but it's not a fez. That's something that they usually do, and they usually have I want to say black cloth with intricate designs. So that's something that you can definitely tell them apart. I mean, physically you really couldn't tell them apart because they're pretty much almost 99% genetically identical. So there's not really telling them apart by looks. So I'm gonna get into more of the spiritual beliefs in just here in a second. You there?
Oh yeah. Please continue. Thanks for the answer.
Okay, no problem, man. All right, I'm gonna go over into the Mandinka, which is gonna be they're a little further away from the other two groups. The Yoruba and the Igbo are closer together with each other. Give me 1 second, I gotta pull up.
Okay, did we lose Haru?
No, he's still there. He's just going through his information.
Okay, I thought we had lost him.
Okay.
Is Haru there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. This is my fault. My notes was a little unorganized. I'm trying to get back to my Mandinka page. Give me a sec.
Okay. Well, with that being said, I'll pose another question. Why do we think? Why do we not talk about Western and Sub-Saharan Africa? Why do we not talk about it? What seems to be the problem with that? It seems to be as if there's embarrassment or some type of intentional act of hiding this culture. Why is that? I open that up to the panel.
My perspective. Hold on.
No, you can go ahead. I'll go after you.
Oh, okay. All right. I was getting confused there. I heard somebody else. No, I was saying, I think we're not talking about West Africa because there's this stigma that anything or they don't really matter. So it's easy for us to just skip over them and go right to Egypt because, you know, of course, Egypt is the crowning jewel of civilization in Africa. From my perspective, that's one of the reasons why we don't talk about them as much. You can go ahead, Chris.
I agree with what you and what Consul said. I think sometimes like it actually feel good when, you know, thinking back, like, you know, well, from West or Central Africa, where the slave trade, you know, occurred. We know it did occur in Northeast Africa, Sudan, and areas like that at an earlier time. We know a lot of us that have, you know, gone into certain countries in America that were easy route from the Atlantic Ocean. It's depressing, you know what I mean? Sometimes you don't want to think about the bad shit, and times, you know, also, you know, you don't want to think like, well, allow this to happen. So it's easy for us to automatically want to gravitate towards, you know, what we were, you know, kings and queens of ancient Egypt. You know, we were, you know, the ones that now all humanity do come from Ethiopia. You know, but it's easier, you know, to say, well, we're masters of we with this, and that. You know, and it also ties in with the whole Afrocentric thought and Pan-African thing, you know, because, you know, when you go to Africa, you know, I mean, and I have a lot of African friends from Ghana, you know, areas that we're speaking about. You know, to be Afrocentric, Pan-African, it's foreign to them. It doesn't even make sense because the actual area geographically existent, you know, in terms of, you know, and it's like it's just conventional terms in the Western world that they have to coexist. Maybe that's what I think.
Can everybody hear Chris?
I couldn't make out the last of what he was saying. It was cutting up pretty bad.
Yeah, me. But I do, what I heard, I do agree with Chris. And I think one of the reasons why people don't really talk about West Africa primarily is because it's not being shown publicly and being dug up and having artifacts and treasures being taken out of it from a visual standpoint. So you don't really claim something you don't really find yourself aware of. And because of that, you know, there's a sort of a hindrance to want to ask questions about that particular area. Egypt's just easier to fall into. It's easier to find information about. It's easier to attach yourself to and say that you're affiliated with the land and the people because it's just easy. The work has been done. They dug up the tombs, dug up the pyramids. You know, they show you all the artifacts, and you know it's just easy. You don't have to really do much to claim that area. You know, it's just easy. The work has been done.
Well, if I can add a perspective to that, I think Egypt, you know, especially in Hollywood, has been kind of glamorized. So when, you know, um, throughout my childhood, and even my early adulthood, before I knew the truth of a lot of things, one of my favorite movies is Cleopatra. You know, Liz Taylor Cleopatra. That back back in the day, you know, that kind of image, that glamorous image, and we were never associated with that. So I think when you get to a point of knowing, certain, you know, or being aware of certain knowledge, and you know that these movies that are being made, you know, never included you, but the reality is that those people more look like you more so than Elizabeth Taylor. You know what I mean? That the people in Egypt were people of color. All of these, I guess, like Haru and Chris was saying, and even Melvin, all of these glamorous and beautiful artifacts and all this rich history actually comes from Africa. You want to connect yourself with that. I mean, the only thing that we learn about West Africa is that we came there as slaves. You don't really realize that there's a whole culture, and it's a rich culture, and it's just as rich as Egypt. You just think, you know, I know that that's where I came from. That's where my ancestors came from. But you never learn or see um those people depicted as being glamorous or having this rich culture. You just see us being taken there as slaves. So why would you want to identify yourself with that? Even when you do know better, you still have that image burned into your mind. So
Yes, that's interesting. Hey, Kyle, so you there? I don't know if you wanted to add to the question that you asked.
Yeah, yes, I do. I mean, the situation, and I've always felt this way, is it's not fair that we don't take Africa into totality. And it's even more unfair that we don't keep Africa in its proper perspective. Um, Continental Africa has its own culture and aspect of things. We are displaced to a certain degree as Africans because we are in America. We have a different culture, different sets of values and precepts. So, in analyzing these tribes and breaking it down to individual cultural groups, we're really giving justice to Africa, what's been termed the landmass called Africa, because we need to get more specific in the makeup, the general makeup of Africa, and not just think of the cradle of civilization starting in the area called the Horn of Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia region, and going on a northerly IEs or a northerly route, i.e., what we consider to be southern, along the Nile Valley, as just the only epitaph for all Africans globally. It's a lot more to us than that, and really owning up to the admixture that we are as Africans. So this is very important, and it's good information, and I'm glad that the brother Heru was bringing this out because we've discussed this before, and this needs to be a staple in any conversation dealing with Black Power, dealing with Pan-Africanism, and anything of the sort. And that's my take on it. But I yield the floor. Open the floor back to Brother Heru.
All right. Y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
All right, just make sure. All right, now the Mandinka themselves. I would say this is the smaller of the three groups that I'm discussing. Surprisingly, they cover a lot more range than the other two groups. The Mandinka primarily inhabit Mali. You got Burkina Faso, Niger. I want to say the northwestern tip of Ghana. You got Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Senegal, and even in Mauritania. So they cover a wide range of area, even though they are the smaller of the ethnic group. Unlike the other two groups, when it comes to a particular religion, the Mandinka are primarily Muslim. That's gets a little tricky there. For me, when I was doing this research, it was a little harder for me to track down one, say, like some kind of indigenous belief system for them, seeing as though they're primarily over 99% Muslim. in regards to the other two, it was a little bit easier because they still have their traditional beliefs intact. So we can see by the Mandinka being up, and I would say northern of the West Africa, they're more influenced by Islam, and they've been influenced by Islam for over 1,000 years. We know one of the more famous people to come out of the Mandinka stock would be Mansa Musa of Mali, the claimed richest man in the world. So we understand the effect that Islam had on him and his kingdom at that time. So, like I said, it was harder for me to find any indigenous beliefs on that particular group. Any questions about the Mandinka really quick before we start going into it?
Hey, Ru, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I have a book. I've had it for a while. It's a pretty good read. Probably one of the only pre-colonial writings from an actual African that had actually traveled from Mali, West Africa,
Hey, Chris, your mic is acting up. I don't know if it's just me or.
Yeah, I'm gonna come out and try to come back in.
No, I'm having a hard time hearing them too, yeah.
Yeah, continue on, everyone. Then when he gets back, we'll be able to expound.
All right, no problem.
He's back.
Okay.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Go ahead, Chris. Oh, there he went. He's gone.
While we wait for him to come back, I noticed you brought up Mansa Musa. Is there somebody you could bring up for us to, correlate between the Yoruba and the Igbo? Just somebody famous and popular.
Very famous, as in like Mansa Musa famous? I don't think so, but
Hey, can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah. We
that's
hear you loud and
awesome.
clear now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, finish saying what you were saying. Okay.
Okay. No, I was about to say in the Igbo tribe, they do have a matriarch that they say they all descended from. If I'm not mistaken, his name is Iri. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Someone correct me if you know what I'm talking about, but I believe his name is Iri. He was supposedly the main Igbos, and that's where they descended from. As far as the Yoruba goes, I don't know of any one person that is on the stature of Mansa Musa. But of course, there are very famous individuals that come out of the Yoruba stock, which I'm going to touch on later, being as though they're more modern from antiquity. But you can go ahead, Chris.
Cool. Peace in Africa. Peace to Team O.S.I.R.I.S. Yeah, this is one of the books I was talking about earlier. It's I've been Batutu, and I've been Batutu in Black Africa. One of the interesting things about the book, especially about what we're talking about, and how in reference when you were saying about the Islamic influence towards certain regions because they may be more towards the upper north of West Africa. And one of the things that Ibn Battuta, when he had went into like Mali and different places, he realized that although the kings may have been Islamicized to a certain degree, majority of the rest of the populace were not whatsoever. You still had women, African women, still walking around, their breast out. Our indigenous spiritualities and cultures and things like that were still occurring. So I think sometimes the whole Islamic thing was more of a cloak for trade. You don't want to mess around and our people get invaded and things like that because it was like you either you yield to this this new form of Christianity or it's on and popping. And one of the things is that I find it funny is that I trust this account a lot and it's very unique because it was actually written by this individual in this time in pre-colonial Africa. And because there's another book I have where it was the French who paid a French individual, because they've heard all these stories from Islamic writings and other writings about these great kingdoms in West Africa. These very rich Africans. And they heard all these stories for probably hundreds and hundreds of years. So there was a French individual that they paid him a certain amount. If you could actually go there and come back alive and tell us what you saw. The individual went there, he didn't see anything. Those empires were gone like so long, but that alone shows that be careful with taking certain writings and interpretations when they're trying to tell us what ancient West Africa was like. And again, and I'm gonna sum it up is that, although the kings and things like that may appear to be Islamic, a lot of the populace still able to practice our actual focus on life, our culture, pretty much culture.
Hey, Rue, you there?
Yep. I was just waiting on him to finish.
Yeah, I think he muted his mic.
What you say, Melvin?
I said he muted his mic, so I think he's done.
Okay, no problem. All right. Well, I'm gonna further expound into the Mandinka people here really quick. I'm taking this my reference for this information I'm about to give is West Africa by Eugene Mendoza. An introduction into its history, civilization, and contemporary situation. This is about the Mandinka. The Mandinka Empire of Mali rose to power at a time when Islam was filtering into the area. So this could also account for the reason that it was harder to find the indigenous belief systems of the Mandinka people, because at this particular time, Islam was coming over, spreading over into this region where the Mandinka people are. But I'm going to continue reading. All right. Sundiata Keita was the first king of Mali, ruling the empire from about 1240 until his death in 1255. During his reign, he established a territorial base of the empire and laid the foundations for its future prosperity and political solidarity. All right. So not only was Mansa Musa a powerful and popular ruler, we also have Sundiata Keita because the empire rose to power under him. All right. So he's definitely also one of the central figures in the Mandinka history. All right. Any questions about that so far?
No, none
Yeah,
yet. None yet, brother.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Go ahead.
No, I just think I wanted to add that Sundiata Keita was a lot to me. I mean, not to say that he was more powerful than Mansa Musa, but I think Mansa Musa was more diplomatic. I think he tried to establish himself in a different way. He didn't use like a military or political power, but diplomacy. And Sundiata Keita was more of a warrior type. So while Islam was spreading in that area, I think it was more of a political move on his part to take it on. But I don't think he was and I'm not to say that Mansa Musa was a pushover, but I think he held the empire together in a very powerful and strong way. If I'm not mistaken.
Okay. No problem. Your input is definitely appreciated, sis. I'm gonna go to the oral traditions of the Mandinka. According to them, Sundiata Keita was one of 12 who were heirs of the throne of King Daba. When Sumanguru the potentate of the neighboring state overran Kangaba the beginning of the 13th century. He murdered all of Sundiata's brothers. According to tradition, Sundiata was spared because he was a sickly boy who already appeared to be near death. So, ain't that something? I thought that was a cool part of that story. But you know, he rose to power the great Mandinka kingdom. That's something that stuck out to me. As he was growing older, he defeated Semiguru decisively in the battle of Kirina in 1235, and he succeeded in forcing the former tributary states of Kaniaga to recognize that he was the king. In 1240, Sundiata raised Kumbi, the former capital of the Sonika of Ghana. And by the act, succeeded in obliterating the last symbol of Ghana's past imperial glory. What they mean by that is he pretty much stuck a nail in the coffin of the Ghanaian Empire. Not Ghana of today, but there was a Ghanaian Empire that was more northwest of the current country. So he put the final nail in the coffin of that great empire, which that too we will cover at a later date about the Ghana Empire and the power that they held in West Africa. So anybody want to add anything to that point?
Yeah, can I add something to the group? It's funny, earlier I was speaking with a coworker of mine from Ghana. You know, he was telling me about independence of Ghana from Western powers in like 1957. They chose the name Ghana, you know, for their country, you know. So it'd be very interesting when we do get into that. You know, that'll be pretty cool.
All right. All right, I'm gonna move over into a little bit of Mansa Musa, as like we were stating earlier. He's one of the more popular rulers of the ancient kingdom. I think he was more popular because he made that pilgrimage to Mecca, and according to legend, he had passed out so much gold that he crippled economies on his way to Mecca. But then you hear another story of on his way back, he had to borrow because he gave out so much. So he was actually in debt. So yeah, that thing right there, it's up to wide interpretation. You have to dig more. You have to dig deeper into that to get the full truth of what was going on with Mansa Musa. But I'm gonna continue with him. He was the most well-known ruler of the Mandinka kingdom between 1307 and 1332. As I stated, he made his pilgrimage. He was the favorite of the learned men of Islam. Under Mansa Musa's control, the military once again became the driving force of the expansion of the state, and it doubled in size. He fostered the Islamization of the empire, so he was real big on Islam. To addition to Europeans, Mansa Musa is best known for his gifts of gold while on his journey to Mecca. It was his pilgrimage that awakened the world to the stupendous wealth of Mali, spreading the rumors of the kingdom of gold throughout the Mediterranean world. And then almost over 100 years later, Prince Henry, the navigator of Portugal, became so intrigued by such tales that he began a quest to navigate along the coast of Guinea. He wanted not only to find a route for Asia's spices, but also to find a famous king who was surrounded by gold. So, as we see, Europeans had this thought in their mind that the West African coast, or should we say the Gold Coast, as it was being called at this time, was how shall I say this? There was this legend that there was so much gold, and they were all shooting over there to get to it. Now, this is 1415, so as we know, I would say probably about 80 years later is when the slave trade starts to kick up. So now we're starting to see a correlation here with Europeans coming down trying to gain resources, especially gold. That was one of them. Any questions or any comments on that particular thing?
Yes, I would like to make a statement. Uh, most people
Go ahead.
don't know. Most people don't know that in the West Africa region, gold was actually quite easy to obtain. Some of the emperors and leaders there, you see them have, nearly, 10, 20 pieces of gold on each arm, a gold staff, a bunch of chains. You see the women with gold flecks on the face. Gold is very, very easy to obtain. So that would draw a lot of attention from other countries, but at the same time, salt was hugely lacking. So where we would expect them to value gold like we do, they actually value salt the same way. And they would even kill for salt because it was so rare, yet it was so needed. So to understand the minds of these people, when they see gold, we have to visualize that like how we see salt. It's easily accessible. Everybody has it. And so it's not really an issue of, it being a huge deal. That's something I really just want to add
Okay. Appreciate that, Melvin. I also want to make note that Mansa Musa during his time period, he definitely had a lot of servants. Some people slaves, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, he definitely had a lot of servants. He definitely took, according to them, at least 12,000. He took at least 12,000 with him on his Hajj to Mecca. It's pretty impressive that he could get that many people in tow to go with him through there. Um, from their perspective, he had around 90 camels, and they were carrying about 300 pounds of gold apiece. So he had a pretty large caravan traveling through the Sahara, up through the Nile Valley, and then eventually onto Mecca. This just shows you the power that this man held. He was definitely no pushover in respects to the influence and the resources that he had. Also. All right. Then I'm gonna go ahead and move over a little bit into the Yoruba here really quick. If you can give me 1 second, we can build about a couple of other points before I move on to them. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into their origins also.
I just wanted to add something, if I may, because you spoke about Mansa Musa, I believe, having a bunch of servants or slaves, and I mean, I know a lot of people do understand this, but some people may not. That slavery and especially in that time and in those cultures was not the kind of slavery that we endured. The servant, the servants or slaves had a certain amount of power and actually had a class system. So they were able to mobilize and demand certain things and have a certain amount of influence um in the court, if you will, in the royal court, if you will, and ask for certain things. And I wish I could remember the name of this one um slave that actually rose to be a prominent figure during that time because because of his power and his influence over other people like him, he was able to get certain things passed. And so it wasn't like the kind of, slavery or servitude that we think of. They they were well respected and well treated. It wasn't a kind of a lesser than type of thing. So I just wanted to add that.
Yes, they were. Peace and love to you, sister. If you can hear me. Hello.
Oh, peace. Yes, I hear you. I hear you. Peace and go to you.
Peace,
Sorry
Queen.
about
How
that.
you doing? Peace and love
Good.
to the. Peace and love to the panel. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, sister. The Africans, when we had, well, when they had slaves, or we had slaves, they had indentured servants, um, and they had rights. You know, it wasn't like the transatlantic slave trade, taking human beings from one place and taking them to another. You know, they and torturing them and doing certain things. Yeah, they it's records of Mandinka beating a few people, but not to the extreme where you know, you do it for no reason. You know, when they came and got us under the Capitalistic Act, it was straight out of, you know, it was for sugar cane and shit, for nothing. You know, they misplaced you and took you somewhere else, all the way to another continent. It was the most horrific situation that humans can ever experience. But this is how Europeans treated each other before even coming in contact with Africans. People need to study the what they used to do to women who they classified as witches, and what they used to do to the Irish or the Celts or the Celts at one time. The way they treated them, it was harsh. Even when they did it to the Red Legs or the Irish that they brought to the Caribbeans, it was harsh. This is the way Europeans, they were brutal people. This is what they do to each other. But when it came to us, when we took prisoners of war based off the conquering of other tribes, you know, it wasn't torturable. We didn't torture. You know, you had rights. You had to work the field or work the land, and you can work your way up and even merge into a certain type of family. You know what I'm saying? If it had to, if you had to, based off your actions. But the point is that slavery is not a new thing. Human beings have been taking advantage of human beings for a long time. It's just that when the European got a chance to get his hands on human beings, it was the most extreme, you know. But this is how he treated himself in Europe. I mean, he wasn't friendly to nobody at all. You know, this is just what he is. This is what he do. This is his skill and his method of control. You know, and when it comes to, I know the brother was going to get into the origin of the Yoruba. I don't know how far to go into the way they came.
I think Brother Amir dropped. Until he comes back, hey, Rue, if you want to continue, and then when he comes back, let him speak.
Yeah, I had already spoke briefly on just the general human peopling of West Africa in general. How of course they migrated from East Africa. Um, I didn't want to go, like I said, I didn't want to go too deep. You know, I wanted to, you know, just a general overview, just to give people some familiarity with the groups themselves. As I stated earlier, I wanted to say it was about the 600 BCEs, where they began to come into their own. Like I said, initially, they weren't calling themselves the Europe at that particular time. Um, we're gonna say in the period. I'm going back a little bit, but right around the time that people first started settling there, you start to see them developing a culture where they carve different sculptures and make different figurines and things of that nature. I'm pretty sure we've all heard of the knot culture. You know, I would say that started to give started to give rise to some of these people. They're famous for their big terracotta, which I think you're doing an in-depth presentation on them one day.
Definitely.
Yeah, because they have some interesting art, um, and I like to definitely get into that a little bit. The Yoruba themselves, they have a spiritual system. I make sure I pronounce this right. Ife, and that's the name of the center of worship for them also. Give me 1 second. I'm going through my notes here. Give me a sec. All right, here we go. The Yoruba people, before they became what we call the Yoruba today, they were just pretty much people that were grouped in that general area. It had, I would say, primarily like in Togo and a little bit of Benin before it started to stretch over into Nigeria. So there were a bunch of like different city states with their own local leaders. They started to rise to power and gain a little bit of influence. All right. See, during the trying to get you a time period here. My notes is all out of order. I apologize to the audience for this. It's my fault here.
Sorry, bro. You good? Take your time.
I want to say around 16. Go ahead. What you say?
I said you good. Take your time.
Yeah, I'm wanting to say around the 1600s. The Yoruba themselves, they started to amass a nice amount of power, and you know this is also around the time of the slave trade going on, so they were definitely dealing with that also. Even though a lot of us share Yoruba ancestry, they were also heavily involved in the transatlantic slave trade. They would demand local groups turn over people, you know, from completely destroying the groups. So that's one of the dark things of the transatlantic slave trade that, you know, we don't like to touch on. We like to do a lot of romanticism, and sometimes we like to say, oh well, they were forced into doing it, but a lot of times these people were willing participants in the actual slave trade. A lot of people are right. They weren't trading each other's or members of their particular ethnic group. They were trading members of other ethnic groups because to them they were eliminating competition. This whole like Chris stated earlier, this whole concept of like Pan-Africanism and we're all one, that's not the same ideology they held, or still to this day that they hold now. And, you know, in their mind, they're like, well, we're trying to control the resources. We want to take over this land. So let's go ahead and trade these brothers from these neighboring ethnic groups, you know, to soften them up. So that was one of the things that they were doing. So the Yoruba definitely were involved in it. Melvin, I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Not really, but it's a good thing to mention because, you know, a lot of people, you know, they want to play the passive role when it comes to our history, and you have to understand that many of us are tribalists, and you know, tribes, you know, cornered territory any way they could. You know, more territory, the better chance of survival for you and your people. The more you can eliminate the competition, the better survival for you and your people. So I mean, it's just the crux of it. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand what it is to be African. Period.
Right.
And one thing too, if I can speak, Hebrew, if you don't mind, really quick. But one thing too is crazy to me is that
go ahead.
you have a king or prince in the 70s who sold his own damn relative in the 1970s in West Africa, sold his own relatives. That's crazy to me, you know? And there's a lot of things that we ignore that need to be addressed. And again, you know, the romanticism and the escapism to Kemet, this isn't Disneyland, you know? And it's great and it's awesome that we're dealing with this. You know what I'm saying? And it's, a lot of these things need to be dealt with. And not necessarily this, but even the language, the culture, you know, the things that, you know what I'm saying, that you're doing, you know, and I appreciate this, Hebrew.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think even for myself personally, I had carried a lot of this romanticism within myself. Sometimes you just got to come to grips and realize that, you know, our history isn't exactly roses and bubbles. There was definitely error on our end. A lot of people fell victim to the control aspect, which not not only thing. This is just a human thing. You know, humans just want power in general. So I think that part of it, it has to be said and it has to come out. This wasn't a situation where you have foreign people coming down and the African people are defenseless. It wasn't like that at all. These people had leaders. They had particular groups who were definitely in positions of power, and they were willing to work with Europeans and trade with Europeans, and in exchange for humans. Now, what I can say I do feel is I don't think that they knew what the Europeans were going to do as far as ship them over to the Americas or up into Europe and do what they were going to do to them. That I don't think they had any clue that that was going to happen at all. I personally think that if they did know that that was going to happen, I don't think they would have engaged in trade with them at all. That's me. That's me personally. I don't know if anybody else has a different opinion on that, but I don't think if they knew what was going to happen to the people, our direct ancestors, that they would have done that, even to a neighboring group, because they themselves weren't even like that with each other.
Well, I
Go ahead.
I think that in most instances I would agree with that. I think a good example of what you're talking about is Queen Nzinga. I think that's and that's a little bit out, that part of Africa that she was in. I mean, it's still West Africa, but it's, I think, a little bit outside of the peoples that you're talking about now. But it's still kind of, I think it's still relevant because that's a story that's heavily romanticized. Everybody, speaks about how diplomatic she was, but she did things to keep her people safe. She stole Africans into slavery that they were warring with. And I don't know if she had as much concern about what was going to happen to them. And I would kind of wonder, if she didn't think it was so bad, why did she fight so hard to not let her people be enslaved that way? You understand what I mean? I think, you know, it's just like with anything. I think, maybe some of the leaders didn't, probably have an idea of how bad it was going to be, but some of them may have or may not have cared or just wanted to keep their people from being enslaved. Or because if you think about it, someone like her saw what the Portuguese were trying to do to her people then. They were warring with them. So if you're willing to engage in battle with me like that, what would you not do? You're coming to my land trying to take over territory, and you're already brutalizing my people. So if you enslave them, you had to have some kind of idea of what that enslavement might entail. So I don't, I think in some cases they just were trying to be, the self-preservation, just surviving.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it might be two possible outcomes. I think it's either they didn't necessarily care and they were just trying to make it, and so by giving up a few people, it was like, okay, we could care less as long as we're still here, from a tribal perspective. But then, if you say, okay, well, we're gonna sell them into slavery, you gotta understand the concept, their concept of slavery versus another ethnic group or another, set of people. It's not going to be the same. They're not going to be given the same rights and privileges because they're totally different people with different cultural backgrounds. So I think it's, either they thought maybe they were well taken care of, or they just didn't care. I don't think it's a sense of knowing that people are actually going to do people that you give away harm. From a thinking perspective of, as a ruler, you would want that to at least be on your hands to some degree. Uh, Kasu, Chris, you guys have anything to add to that?
Yes, I think everyone is. It's almost redundant for me to even add to that paradox because everybody is so on point with what they're saying. So, I mean, it's really not much I can add. I can't reiterate enough the importance of getting into the inner workings of Africa because our perspective can be a bit jaded because we really don't take into account that we are directly byproducts of Central and South America. The majority of us were not um, uh, indentured directly to America. We were indentured by way of slave trade to the Central and Southern Americas. We were affected grossly by the Portuguese, the Latin, the French, um, and the British. And so we have a deep, deep, deep history that goes as a go-between between ourselves in the Africas and the Americas and then going into Africa and understanding that that diaspora coming from that western coastline of Africa was very, very important to the admixture that we have today and an intricate confusion that we have today with identifying our culture. Because remember, there were a lot of inbreeding that was done purposely for the means of creating operable slaves, especially when it came to the men. They wanted the man inbred a certain way to have a certain look and a body stature, the same way you would treat a lower life animal, breeding them to create a hybrid. And that's what happened to us. And it affected us psychologically as well as physically. You notice our physical stature is so much different than the continental and indigenous Africa because of the fact there are a lot of things going on in sex camps and things of that nature that were being done. They were calling them breeding camps here in America during the slave period. And that grossly affected our ability to actually connect to our ancestors because we don't have any archaic evidence here in the United States and the other Central and Southern Americas to give us a sense of belonging in Africa. And this is important because we are African descendants ancestrally, anciently. But some of us do not have the benefit of being directly tied to the motherland. And we have to be able to learn more about Africa to understand more about America and what we are as Americans, labeled and called Americans, so happen to be Africans. But yes, I yield the floor. Is Brother Heru there, or is he, you there, brother?
Yeah, I'm back. I was just letting you finish your point.
Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead, brother. Just let me know if you are, what points you're speaking on. But no, I yield the floor, brother.
All right. All right. Now we're gonna get a little bit into the Ifa a little bit of the Yorubas. Um, as we all know, the Yoruba has one of the more popular indigenous African spiritual systems. A lot is drawn from it. Sometimes even Christianity itself. Um, we do all understand that back in those slavery, what we had to do a lot of the different cultures embed our own spiritual beliefs into Christianity so they wouldn't get in trouble by massa. You know what you understand what I'm saying? So we know that the Yoruba spiritual system is directly related to Santeria, which is practiced primarily down in the islands. Let's see here. Then we got the actual beliefs of the system or the core.
Still there? Brother Hero, are you still
Okay,
there?
we might have lost him again. Yeah, he's having signal problems. Um, I do want to pose this question to the panel. In exploring Africa and under the auspicity of Pan-Africanism, how can we actually make Pan-Africanism work with this kind of information?
I'm sorry, could you pose that question again?
All right, say that again, brother.
I said, could you pose that question again?
Yes, so knowing this information that we know under the auspicity of Pan-Africanism, how can we, or what solutions can be gained for the advent of Pan-Africanism, those who have an affinity for it, with this particular information in dealing with Western and Sub-Saharan Africa?
You're saying what could help them understand this particular way of life?
Well,
Pan-Africanists.
when we take on these ideals like
Okay.
Pan-Africanism and Afrocentricity, but more so Pan-Africanism, how do we take the information that we're presenting today to help those who have an affinity for that particular ism or ideology?
Well, I like to touch upon that if I can. I think I brought up in the last um, panel discussion that we had that I was reading the biography of Amy Jacques Garvey and some of the work that she did, which was pretty amazing. I think one of the things that she tried to establish and that Marcus Garvey tried to establish was just a Pan-African identity. You know, you may not necessarily agree with somebody as far as how you want to display that, but just understanding that it's important to have one, to understand that in some way, me being here in America and a sister in Brazil and another brother in Cuba, like we all share the same experience of being taken from, you know, or our ancestors being taken um, from more than likely one of the three cultures that Haru was exploring, and because of that, we're kind of disconnected from a part of who we are. So just agreeing with that and knowing that is a start, you know, and basically learning about it. So one of the things that Amy Jacques Garvey tried to establish was kind of these little study groups that people would have. And obviously they didn't have the kind of technology like that we have then where it would have just been easier to jump on a Google Hangout or create a Facebook group. But she would write these editorials, which she would have a reading list, and you know the information was not as readily available. So it wasn't like you could just Google something or go kind of go to a library. In places that we lived, especially in the South during those times, there weren't libraries where you could go and get this information. But just having the knowledge of and trying to organize people in a way where they could know who they are or know where they came from, and then also tie themselves to an identity, knowing that they're not, who someone in Jamaica is not different than me. We all have the same struggle. We all have some of the same experiences. So I think that's why having these kinds of discussions are important, because it helps us to see how much alike we are, as opposed to trying to, draw upon differences and debate, information that really has nothing to do with who we are or where we come from.
And it's very powerful. Well said. Well said. And I think it can be used in that faction. Um, and we do have to think of more creative ideas, because I don't think we're addressing white supremacy. I think a lot of times when we talk about things like this, we're addressing racism and bigotry, which is a distraction to the white mental state of supremacy. because the term white and the term black were created by supremacists, not people of ethnic groups. They did not look at themselves as black in Africa. Nobody looked across at another tribe and said, there goes those black people. Those are byproducts of modern social constructs. And we tend to try to take modern mentality into an ancient arena to search for answers. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of our ancient ancestors to understand how they thought, because they didn't have a direct nemesis complex with another group of people because of a different color. That came with the advent of alpha and beta and survival. And then eventually that gave way to that. But the supremacist comes in all colors. It's just that the term white is the privileged mentality of a ruling class that named themselves white supremacists. Nobody that is continentally African would call them supreme. In history, you would only hear them called invaders, but they would never bow down or cower down to say that these people were supreme to them. And supremacists were also looking like you and I, brown to olive to bronze to dark skinned. It wasn't just the European that was a supremacist. So we do have to put those things into perspective so that we can maintain a rational logic mind in solving this issue. Because this issue has to have constructive solutions to the matter. And that's the whole purpose of this discourse. This thing has to be constructive and has to be spoken on a collective. We have to open our perspective to all avenues of solutions. And trust me, when you get outside of the ethnocentric mindset and these centric mindsets like Afrocentricity, or if we talk about Pan-Africanism, are we talking about Marcus Garvey? Let me ask the panel this, as we're waiting for the brother Heru to take care of his technical problems. Did Marcus Garvey ever say RBG or Pan-African?
Nope, not one time.
Not one time in his whole career, correct? In public career of service. He never, because isms were not even spoken of in that aspect. This is the same reflection when we talk about Charles Darwin and Darwinisms. Black Pan-Africanism and Afrocentricity, African-centrics, are dealing with centered ideologies of someone observing the action of. So someone that might have been enamored with a Marcus Garvey said, that's a Garveyism, and I'm a Garveyite. And I believe, in my own opinion, this is what I think Marcus Garvey would do. But that doesn't mean that's what Marcus Garvey would do. So we adopt ideologies like RBG, Pan-Africans, red, black, and green. We adopt these ideologies that are put in place as a means of division, because now you got Afrocentrics here and you got Pan-Africans here. You got black supremacists down here. And all of these things are paradoxical because they're one and the same. And they're put in a position to perpetuate supremacy because there's no solution to compete with yourself. If all three of you are diametrically opposed, what is the opposition? But if I appear and create opposition, it will separate you from a collective goal, a collective consciousness that goes beyond religion and skin color. If you understand that, you're comfortable with saying there's only one race, the human race. You won't go around thinking that white people come out of caves and don't have the same organs, limbs, and brains that we do. They have corrupt minds due to supremacy. They are supremacists from the moment they are born. But that is because of the position of casting and classism due to romanticism that gave way to dictionaries and thesauruses because they're a book of diction. So that book of diction starts taking connotations from the original denotation. But every ethnic group has a right to create their own diction out of whatever was created. So we can take the same dictionary and create our own connotative meanings that are suitable to our ethnic group. So we need not go beyond logic, rationale to try to create a brand new word. We don't need to do that. We need to create a brand new mindset because we're talking about connotations of a denotation. We can get to the etymon of a word, and the etymon of a word may not be the same as what you are using ethnically. That does not mean that you can't utilize that word. That means that you have to broaden your mental scope. Because the war of racism starts in the mind. If I can convince you that I'm superior to you because I control your resources and your ability to reproduce yourself, of course you're going to think I'm supreme. If I take away your spirituality and I replace it with mine, then I am supreme to you. But if you focus on your center and go back to your center of collectiveness, being a non-white person, meaning a non-mentally white person, you will understand that the world is but one race. It is easy to get caught in a box. Human beings are outside of the box. We built the box. And that's the beauty of this. We actually built this box. So racism and bigotry, two separate constructs that are used in social control, are the children of supremacy that takes on white connotation because it was constructed by Europeans and Eurasians and then adopted by other classes and ethnic groups. But the ancient European and Eurasian watched that construct that was being placed upon other ethnic groups. Every ethnic group has had an act of supremacy toward themselves. Every ethnic group, from us to any other one, we've controlled each other. That is not to absolve the European/Eurasians' involvement. What that is to do is to give you enlightenment on your ability to constructively solve a problem. Because to think you are a black supremacist, you go against your own nature. Africans were naturally spiritual, and they perform religious spiritual acts. The term religious is not denotative to just going to church or just praying. The term religion can be applied to anything that you are ardent or serious about. This is why definitions have subtopics, because the book of diction starts with phonetic sounds, signs, and symbols that are primordial, that then get transferred into conjecture and tenses. Hence, adjectives, nouns, verbs, they're used in a certain tense. If you say I'm black, I'll ask you, are you calling me black in a noun tense or a verb tense? There's a difference, but it's a matrix. So these things we have to start applying when we start observing our history, start going into the geographical aspects of anthropology. And then we go into the genetic aspects of biology. We start talking about ethnic groups. So we have to know how to classify a conversation and put it in the box it fits in. I can't talk anthropology and then speak about Christianity. They don't fit. That's a theological conversation as opposed to an anthropological conversation, i.e. a field of science or branch of science. But Brother Nazir, peace and love, man. Brother Nazir with Team O.S.I.R.I.S. Open the floor to you, brother. How you be?
I'm good, brother. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just got done running around, putting in work and everything like that. But so I haven't really heard much of the show tonight. So I don't know what's been presented, but I do know what's been presented is on point. Knowing the people that's on the panel and within Team O.S.I.R.I.S, they always come with it. So, but yeah, West Africa, outside of ancient Egypt or Egyptology, because so many other cultures, even outside of Africa, would fall up under Egyptology, because that's how they know Egypt the way they know it, because of studying Syria, because of studying the relationships they had on trade and everything like that. you're pretty much covering the whole area. But so outside of that, and the time period from about 10,000 BCE up until about the start of the dynastic period in Kemet, about 2900 or so. West Africa is if not the first, but definitely right there with studying ancient Kemet or the ancient Sahara or that region, because out of that we see every major religion that was formed, the ideology, the concepts, and I'm talking about ancient history. Everything that came about, Ra, Yah, El, you see the formation of all that during that period and that time frame of many of the concepts, many of the burial rituals, how that actually turned into religion. You see the earliest temples, their ways of worship, and you pretty much see the same thing you see today. So West Africa, though, West Africa was our pinnacle in the sense of that you might not have saw the great feats that the ancient Egyptians and the Nubians or these various cultures from that region, even off into Turkey. You might not see the things on a grand scale in West Africa as far as their architecture, but what they did have, we can say was an advancement, because people create and build what's useful to them at the time. We're dealing with a different climate. We're dealing with a different geographical terrain. I mean, the weather's different. The climate is different. I mean, all this stuff, you're right there on the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, all this stuff plays a factor in how you construct, how you build. The natural catastrophes that would take place. Was this an earthquake zone? Was it a typhoon zone? Hurricane zone? So I mean, all that plays a part, and it was our last point that we know when we were on the continent. We came from there. We can claim that. We know based on what we know today, we can claim that. We don't know if we can claim Nubia. We don't know if we can claim Egypt. And the evidence is indicating more and more that was not us. We might have played a part somewhere down the line. You know what I'm saying? And we're great. Our ancestors were great. It doesn't make them, it's almost disrespect to them. We spit in their faces when we say, oh, it's a letdown. You weren't the ancient Egyptians. Oh, you weren't the A group. You weren't the B group. You weren't the C group. Oh, my ancestors wasn't shit. That's really what we say. And it's crazy. People are so romanticized and I'm not even going to go there right now. Let me stick to the topic. But West Africa, we can claim that. So as much as we study, and I get caught up in it too, studying just primarily dealing with the ancient history, because like I said, that's where everything was formed that we deal with. All the arguments we have. I'm a Hebrew, I'm arguing against a Muslim. I can see where all that shit formed. Excuse my language. But West Africa is very important, and we don't talk about it enough. And I know the brother Heru is doing a hell of a job. My daughter, man, I figured somebody else would come in, but my daughter.
No,
and this is, huh?
No, we good. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, man, this is a true story. It's like, as much as we claim, the individuals, the faces, the usual faces, there's either typing something on Facebook, wherever they posting about whatever concerning our culture or what have you, outside of their personal stuff. Or the common faces that we see, the SETIs, the O.S.I.R.I.S squad and all that. A lot of times you might see this strong face, this guy that kicks this and this, but he has a real life at home. He has real situations going on at home where he might still be in the streets, where he might be still working for the white man that he banging on him, where he might be doing this or doing that. You don't know. a lot of times our kids are not even African-centered, but we're African-centered parent. Or we're a conscious parent. Whatever your terminology it is, you're enlightened, whatever. Whatever your terminology might be. But a lot of times our wives might not be. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, and that goes for the sisters who are a part of the conscious community, who are, you know, you see them a lot, but you don't really see their man. You don't really know what's going on, or maybe they don't want to put the aspects of their life on out for the public. You know what I'm saying? I know I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like I just got on Facebook, what, a year and a half ago? Because everybody just kept telling me it was so great. You missing out on something. You know? So, okay, you know what? I'm going to get on here. And then start out, okay, you know what? I'm going to just stick to the conscious stuff, and I'm going to friend only conscious people on here. You know? It's like, then you realize, like, damn, I got all guys on my damn Facebook page. You know what I'm saying? Like, wait a minute. You know, it's like, wait a minute. Now, something just wrong with that. Just, come on, by default. So it's like, you know, it's a lot, man. We still humans, man. Like, I seen Hey Rue earlier. He put up a post, man, and I'm going to be done just a second, about Polite, you know, his dance and his antics and stuff like that, man. And it's like, we take a Christian mentality right into the conscious community and then pretend like it's not there. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are so religious minded and thinking that you are supposed to have this type of ethics and morals. You shouldn't cuss, brother. That's not my. And this is the same way the priests used to control us, the common people in ancient Kemet. That's why I go hard on that. People, oh, you're anti-African because you're bringing out the negatives about the culture. You're anti-African, brother. Okay, all right.
No, that's just not playing into the romanticism of what we study. I don't believe, and I know no member on Team Osiris believes in just putting out the good stuff. I mean, if we're gonna talk about these things, we need to talk about everything as a whole. You know, we can't leave anything out. I want to quickly apologize to the viewing audience. I'm having some connection issues, so if I fade out, you know, that's what's going on. But I just wanted to add on to the brother Nazir's point. How the climate in West Africa was during
Your phone faded, bro.
Okay, yeah. I'm having some funky issues, but no, we can definitely see these same issues that they have in the 14, 15, and 1600s with themselves. We can see that within us. We are the direct descendants of these people in a war-torn area. West Africa is definitely important to the context of the entire African continent, but also I wanted to do this and do future presentations about West Africa because I want our people here in America to see how we interact with each other. Same thing can go for over there also. The same thing can go for over there also. We see a lot of ourselves in what they do and the climate that they had to endure. You know, you have all these different ethnic groups. And remember, I'm only talking about 3 of them now, but I mean, we're talking about hundreds of different ethnic groups, you know, constantly warring with each other. You have a political climate of this particular region of that continent just in constant turmoil. I mean, you have one empire after another jockeying for position. That we treat each other and how we act amongst ourselves is almost a mirror of what's going on over there. The the wars over here knocking each other off over petty bull. It seems like it's the same. It's some of the same things that's going on over there. I didn't know if you wanted to finish your point, Brother Nazir, but I just wanted to add that.
You know, I do want to say something.
Good.
I want to say something briefly that My dad used to say, people lie, numbers don't. Now, sometimes numbers can be skewed. But this is what I'm trying to express to those who have an affinity for being African. In Africa alone, and I've said this before, it's over 3,000 distinct ethnic groups. 3,000 types of people, ethnically. So stop thinking that Africa is just black. You're not going to be just black with 3,000 ethnic groups. And to mention 2,000 languages within the 3,000 ethnic groups. So don't think if you decipher one type of language, it's going to matter for the entire of Africa. Some Africans continentally have never seen other Africans that are continental before. Some Somali have never seen a Nigerian in their lives. Now, you add that diversity to you being over here in America and the 500 years of breeding and mixing you've had. And then you tell me that you're African. What type of African are you? Ask yourself that. It's going to take more than a couple of tests to figure that out. The only logic behind that is to accept your diversity and not play the supremacist game. Because it's not as simple as black and white. It's not. I'm not even going to get into, because it's not the subject matter, how many tribes are consist between the European region and Asian region of the world. The staggering number there. So you can't call all of them white. So definitely, we are the most diverse. We're more genetically different from each other than a Chinese and a European are from each other. We are the world's second largest and second most populous continent. That's Africa.
Hey, Kansu, I don't want to cut your vision, but I want to ask something real quick.
No, go ahead.
You asked me a question yesterday, and I want to give an answer. You asked me yesterday. You said, "What does the DNA test mean?"
Right.
And I told you from my perspective, it gives me a sense of closure by being able to say, "Hey, my people come from this particular region, or I'm a descendant of these types of people." Because, from my perspective, when we're speaking on these matters in terms of ancestry, you get a lot of religious jargon from Moors, Hebrews, Christians, Muslims. Well, you don't have an identity. You don't have this. You don't have that. So for me, I would say that getting a DNA test will help me to understand what particular genetic affinities I share with the West African population. Because to me, it's not enough to just say, "Hey, I'm a descendant of West Africa." I would like to say, "Hey, you know what? I'm a descendant of Nigeria. I could be a descendant of the Igbo people. I could be a descendant of the Yoruba people, or I can be a descendant of Senegal, Gambia. I could be a descendant of the Mandinka." I would much rather say that than just say, "You know what, I'm West African and don't care about it." So to me, a DNA test, depending on how you look at it, it might not mean much to you, but for somebody like me, it's going to add some closure as to where your ancestry comes from. And I'll go ahead and yield the floor back to you, bro.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I actually appreciate DNA tests. It should be rational. You should take it in rationally. That's my thing. I've seen in these last few years of this conscious movement, a lot of fanaticism and losing rational scope of what's going on in the world in front of you. And we become delusionary about being proactive in the world in front of us. Most of us, I did a short video I put out on YouTube from my channel. It was a 4-minute video, and I talked about today, Sandra Bland's family took a settlement of $1.9 million. She took a settlement. How did she do it? Because the family did it in her name. They settled for the injustice that was done to her for $1.9 million. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, when we're talking about rallying to the point, when we talk about these things, we don't have the mental mind of a revolutionary because we settle for $1.9 million in a court of law. Because we think the world is black and white. So
Can I play devil's advocate on that?
And I don't want to take away from the topic of this show, but this is what this speaks to. Because understanding and studying Africa and not remembering that is a whole lot of water and a whole lot of land between you and Africa is why we think like, well, let's settle for $1.9 million. Yeah, I'm mad, but $1.9 million will be enough. It couldn't be enough money in the world to bring your loved one back. But this system of capitalism, which is a branch of supremacy, settles with you for $1.9 million. It's a settlement, meaning all, you know what? All is forgiven. We'll give you pardon because you gave me $1.9 million. So until we get that out of our head, we are romanticizing about Africa because we haven't put Africa up here and in here. We haven't done that. If it's not in your mind and in your heart, you're not going to speak it. You're not going to live it. You might be of it, but you won't be about it. Because the capitalist system says, how much? Mugabe in Zimbabwe says, no more whites over here. Is that what he said? Anyone in the panel knows about that? He says, we don't want any more of the Dutch or whites in our area, the Afrikaans that occupy in that area in southern London.
Yeah, he said that, but
the Chinese come in.
Right, he said that because of them. He's doing business.
So I'm going to pay you for your resources. Oh, come on in, yellow man. It wasn't like a group of black men came in. A group of yellow men came in. And he said, sure. So he's a revolutionary in one aspect, but has a price on the other. So we really got to get critical and have some critical thinking, some critical action that's really being done. We cannot take for granted our skin color because it don't matter the higher you go. The skin color is actually less important. It's less important the higher you go. That's why we're breaking down Africa. So you can see the diversity. It's 3,000 ethnic groups, people. It's 2,000 languages. You better stop thinking it's only one vibration. You ain't gonna get one vibration with 3,000 ethnic groups. They all ain't gonna be talking and walking the same with 2,000 languages. You think they understand each other with 2,000 languages? They had to adopt Kiswahili and French in order to just handle their commerce because they were colonized. So the commerce moved in, they had to adopt French, and then they also developed what is called Swahili. So just be conscious of this space in front of you now. Be conscious of the now. History is awesome. We go to history to learn our mistakes, not to revel in our accomplishments. So just mind. I think Brother Nazir wanted to say something. I know, Brother Heru, you have the floor. But it's just a topic. You know, I wanted to pick the opportune time to speak about this without taking away from the topic. But go ahead. I yield the floor.
No, I was about to say you could continue building, man. I don't know what's going on, man. I just keep getting dropped out. It's like the ghost of Hebrews past is coming to get me.
Oh. Shots fired. Shots fired.
Hey,
Nah,
I just wanted to say,
shout out to my brothers, though.
Go ahead, brother.
Go ahead, Nazir.
Okay, no, I just wanted to say, no, I'm good. I was going to ask you a couple of questions on that. I was going to play devil's advocate, Kansu, but I think your words of we good with what you said.
Oh no, brother, it might be.
No. I ain't gonna. This ain't the show.
Okay. I got you.
We'll do that in private.
Yes, sir.
Can I just wanted to add something. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Gwen.
No, go ahead, sis. Go ahead. I can wait.
No, I mean, we're kind of a little bit past when you were speaking about Pan-Africanism, but I thought it was an excellent question because I think a lot of people who consider themselves Pan-Africanists don't really understand what it was in its inception. And I think a lot of us, and I'm not going to assume that everybody who claims to be RBG hasn't done it, but they really, if they haven't, need to research the Pan-African Congress and how powerful that was. And mainly, it was because you had large groups of people and organizations that got together and tried to mobilize and put things into place that would affect us across the diaspora. And while, people are screaming RBG and calling themselves Garveyites, I don't even think they understand that the things that they did 80 to 100 years ago were more influential and effective than the things that we do now. We're not even doing anything that mirrors that right now, as far as I know. You have people who didn't get along. You have people who had different ideologies, but you have people who represented certain parts of the diaspora that would speak about the things that they were going through, and they would try to mobilize and put all of their issues and down and document them so they could try to actually have real change. Like they would go to the United Nations and say, hey, these are our grievances. All of us across the world, not just here, not just in Brooklyn or the Bronx or in Chicago. Like you have people from the United States, West Indies, Africa say, hey, this is what's going on with us. We're catching hell all over. And they could agree to disagree, but they understood that concept. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And also, I'd like to add to her point really quick that there's nothing wrong with Pan-Africanism at all. I don't want it to seem like we're trying to say that there's something wrong with it by a long shot. Pan-Africanism definitely serves its purpose. I definitely consider myself a Pan-Africanist, Garvey. I definitely consider myself that. The thing is putting Africa in historical context, or should I say in its proper context. Because I know from an African-American perspective, we have this delusion of grandeur that Africa, or the continent we call Africa, is this utopia of Black love and everybody's getting along, when that's not the case. Like Kansu said before, we got thousands of different ethnic groups. We got hundreds of different languages, and we have 1 billion people on this continent. So everybody has their particular group, and it's safe to surmise that each person is going to do what's in the best, should I say, what's best for their particular family and their particular group. So it's not a situation where you should feel like, hey, the Igbo tribe are going to do what's best for the Yoruba, or the Mandinka are going to do what's best for the Somalis. That's not realistic. These people are going to deal within their particular groups for the most part. It's only when they come over here to the States, which is a new territory for them, that you may see some bonds being formed that they would normally do over there in the continent. But best believe when they get back to where they're going, it'll be a different ball game. You know, they're coming over here using this system to their advantage. They know how to make the system work, and they come over here with a clear plan to do that. And if they can align themselves with other people that's coming from roughly the same area or the same place that they're coming from, then they're going to take that opportunity. Just like, for instance, me being African American, if I'm going to move to a different city, I mean, you know, primarily I would move around people that I feel are going to be similar to me and what I have going on. Even if in any point in time of my life, any other time, I would not necessarily interact with these people. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping it in its proper context about Africa. And that's one of the barriers that we need to break as African Americans, is starting to respect everyone's individual culture. Also, just have general respect for the people over there, because we tend to have this notion that all Africans look alike, or we ain't amongst them, or we don't have nothing to do with them. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because of the 3 ethnic groups I just described, I can almost show you an identical person that will look damn near like you. You know, it's also been proven through genetics. This is true. We also have the records from slavery, so we know who we are in essence. We know where we come from. We just need to put the pieces together, and we need to take those puzzle pieces and put them together so it becomes a whole picture instead of the fragmented one that we have now. Because we have a situation where a lot of the people here, they want to practice escapism and escape to other cultures and escape to other belief systems, when historically those things wouldn't even have anything to do with you. So this for me is just putting everything in its proper context so we understand things going forward and going into the future. So we're going to break these things down. We're going to talk about the good, and we're going to talk about the bad, and we're definitely going to talk about the ugly. So these conversations need to be had so we can get over that hump of thinking romantically about the motherland, or what we call home. And I yield the floor to who else wants to speak.
Actually, I want to, for the constraints of time, I want to be able to give an opportunity for anyone to close out and on anything that they want to expound in regards to the subject matter, because I know Brother Heru has so much more to explore and talk about with this subject matter.
Yeah, definitely.
Just the tip of the iceberg. This isn't even going into more of the culture groups. So I want to open the floor, of course, starting with Brother Heru, who gave a great interpretation, and then any other closing sentiment. But go ahead, Brother Heru.
No, I was about to say, yeah, I definitely want to do more of this presentation on the strength of, I didn't get to present most of the information that I had. Partially it was due to my connection. I was having a bad connection. So I'm in a better area now, but I don't have my notes with me like I just did when I was actually at home. So I definitely want to delve more into this. So there will be a part 2 coming soon. Hopefully I'll go ahead and get it out to you next week. And we can just go ahead and move from there, because I definitely want to go more into the Yoruba. I was really getting into something before I cut out. I didn't even know I cut out. I was definitely about to get into the spiritual system or the belief system, because like I was saying, they have one of the more robust spiritual systems outside of Kemet that we can identify with, that we know of. Because I'm pretty sure everyone in the conscious community has heard of Ifa, Bundun, Santeria. So these are things that we definitely want to get into. And I yield the floor to anybody else who wants to close out. I do appreciate you guys for sticking with me. But I also want to give another apology for my bad connection, so I wasn't able to get everything out that I could.
Peace out, Brother Heru. Excellent discussion. Part 2 is gonna be off the chain. I apologize. I'm eating right now. But one of the things I'd like to, me personally, I would like to add in more on part 2 of the actual languages of these regions and certain factors like that.
No question, Chris. No question.
I actually just want to give like a teaser to anybody that's watching for the next upcoming show. You look on my screen, you see like a step pyramid. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this is a pyramid in they call it the Insu pyramids. They're in Enugu. It's in Nigeria, but these are strictly for the Igbo people, and you're gonna see similarities between these pyramids that they built and the ones that are in Kemet. And again, these are more shots of their pyramids. And then you look at the ones in Saqqara, and you look at the similarities between these in Egypt and then these here for there. So it's also similar to the ones in Nubia as well. So it's just like a sneak peek, a preview of what you're going to expect for part two. Part two is definitely going to be much more in depth. We're definitely going to show much more of each specific culture, each specific group. You know, and he already mentioned the language. You're already going to provide pretty decent presentation, so the people can see as well as hear and make that understanding very, very clear for themselves. That's all I really wanted to show. Pretty good show here.
Queen Neferkara or Brother Nazir?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, thank you for having me. It was a great discussion, and I look forward to part two. Or if there's going to be a part three, whatever, Haru has to add, I look forward to it.
No doubt.
Oh yeah, sis, it's definitely gonna be more than 2 parts because we definitely gonna get deep into West Africa. We definitely gonna go there, and I'm gonna throw some Central Africa in there too. I can get them. We did have a nice population of people that came out of the Congo, so I think we need to do them justice and speak about them also. So definitely be on the lookout for that. I don't want you guys to give up on me yet, but I had some connection issues, but I'm gonna come back, and I'm coming back 10 times harder.
Yeah, it's Brother Nazir. Hey, yeah, I missed a lot of the show, so I'm looking forward to going back, listening to it. Just based on what I heard when I did come in, though, I could tell it was an action-packed show. So definitely check that out. The point I was making earlier, I don't know if I ever made the point, because I probably got to going into other places. But in Melvin, that picture you put up was just right on cue, because that's why it's so important to know time period specific information about the continent. You know what I mean, and how that ancient history relates to the modern times and to those cultures in West Africa, because you can pretty much see where all their, as I said earlier, their concepts and everything came from. So to study West Africa is very important, and even myself personally, I need to get into it more. So that's something I definitely will do, and I appreciate being on the panel.
Hey, Brother Kansu, I think that's everybody. I don't know if Hebrew wanted to close out or anything.
Okay, I wanted to make sure. I thought he was, but well, that was really a dynamic show. I really appreciate the information, and we have so much more to assimilate. So, with that being said, we appreciate the audience and the feedback and input, and we appreciate bringing quality information to everybody out there. And with that being said, Consul Shesh Mamoon, Team Osiris, we out.